An international trade court has blocked President Trump from imposing global tariffs on imports.
Well, this throws his whole economic policy into chaos at this stage because it comes at the same time Elon Musk says he's leaving the Trump administration, which was expected. Let's talk to the US journalist Chapman Bell. Morning to you, Chapman.
Morning.
Did we expect the courts to do this? They basically said he overstepped his mark. 3 of judges. It should have been a decision for the Senate, not for the president.
Well, that's what they're saying. This is based on 2 court cases,
Yeah.
one filed by states, one filed by business owners. Essentially, they're saying the act that the White House used to impose these tariffs was used improperly, and that they've got 10 days to basically end the tariffs. But the White House, of course, has said they will appeal this, and no doubt they will appeal it, and it'll be caught up in courts. But what they're saying is the sweeping tariffs do not constitute an emergency, essentially.
Because they use national security legislation to get this through.
Yeah, it was for a particular thing called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and they're saying this doesn't cover a broad spectrum of tariffs. It is applied, but specifically for emergency situations. But these tariffs have caused, have seen pushback from the Senate, from Congress, bipartisan bills aimed at limiting the time period that these tariffs can be in before they have to be voted on by Congress. So this court essentially ruled that Congress decides the economic outlook, not the president.
And should he lose the appeal, should President Trump be forced to put these tariffs through Congress, are you suggesting that he does not have a strong chance of winning that legal battle?
Well, I don't know. Everything's in the detail, and I think it also means, will they be as sweeping? Each senator, each congressman has their own area to look at in America. So it's going to be based on what is in their constituents' best interests, not necessarily the country.
But unlike most presidents, he does control both houses.
He does.
But he's alienated some of his own supporters already.
Well, he does, and there has been, like I said, bipartisan pushback, but ultimately nothing has transpired so far in bills. But it'll be interesting to see, this, once the appeal is filed, this could ultimately end up in the Supreme Court. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
There are very interesting implications for democracy in this, and parallels with what's going on in the UK, which is that a democratically elected government, or president in this case, with a clear manifesto that people voted for, is unable to implement his manifesto promises because of interference, as he would say, from the courts.
Well, this is the whole basis of American democracy. It's checks and balances. You have an executive branch, you have a legislative branch, you have a judicial branch. So this is how it works,
But he did talk tariffs during the campaign. This is no surprise. He said, it's my favourite word during the campaign.
It's no surprise. However, this is how the American democratic model operates. You have these series of checks and balances. And this 3-panel judge, I think one was appointed by Obama, one was appointed by Reagan, I believe. And I think also I read one was also appointed by Trump. So, these are judges doing what they're supposed to do and looking at the law and seeing how they interpret it. And then it can go on to appeal level.
Moving on to Elon Musk, obviously a key figure in the Make America Great Again movement. He's now left his role at Doge. This was expected, but is it linked to his recent comments on Trump's tax policy?
All the headlines are great. Bye-bye bromance, and, something along those lines. Look, as a special government employee, he had 130 days that he could work. That term is coming to an end. Now, of course, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Donald Trump, you've got big personalities. Of course, they're not always going to agree on everything. Also, considering he is not an official member of the government, an elected member of the government, and has business interests, of course he's going to, not agree with every policy. Yes, he has been really scathing, I guess you could say, about the bill, the big, beautiful bill, saying it can't be both big and beautiful. And calling it disappointing. But ultimately, the time was coming to an end, and maybe he knew that, and it was his time to give his parting shots. But he could say Doge will continue and it'll become part of the government in the future.
Don't Tesla badly need him back because the company's share price has tanked since his involvement with the administration?
There have been plenty of stories saying that the board was wanting to oust him if he didn't come back, and so I think ultimately he's even said he wants to focus on his businesses. He's done his job. He thinks he's contributed and done what he ultimately set out to do in some degree, and now he needs to focus on being a businessman and making electric cars and rockets.
One of the other ways that Elon Musk, one of the many ways that Elon Musk has impacted the world is on concerns over free speech. Of course, that was why he bought X. He's brought a lot into the light in terms of what's going on in the UK. But now we have this story that actually the US could impose some sort of sanctions on UK officials who are complicit in supposed free speech infringement in the UK. This is unprecedented.
Well, it's sanctions. It's saying foreign officials, particularly members of Ofcom here, they're saying it could apply to. If they're complicit in censorship, they will be banned from entering the United States, denied visas. Of course, there's a lot that needs to be understood by what these implications mean, but what it ultimately comes down to is the administration has been very unhappy with the Online Safety Act. They've also raised Lucy Connolly and the abortion rights protesters. They've been really focused on these certain key issues, and it's whether it's altruistic, whether it is focusing on political leverage, or maybe it's something that needs to be addressed further down the road, or they're setting up the stage for his unprecedented second state visit of more topics to talk about. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll also have to see how this is applied and to whom it's applied. But they are kind of doubling down, I guess you could say, on what they call restrictions of free speech in the UK and broadly across Europe.
Yeah, he doesn't like it when people criticise him.
It's not.
Who does?
Am I right? I think in politics you've got to.
People don't like criticism.
Yeah, but when you're president of the United States, you're going to get as many like you as loathe you.
Exactly. I don't think when you find utopia, let me know where it is. I'll join you there.
Yeah,
but I think this is all down to this is what they're focusing on.
Very interesting.
Chapman Bell, that was a fascinating
really
insight into the world of US politics. Thank you so much for joining us.
See us again.
The administration could appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court. So what we're seeing now is this leaves Donald Trump's signature economic policy in limbo in terms of actually what will happen, and to say nothing of what it means for many of these trade deals that the president was actually working on, of course, with the UK, where he announced a major deal just weeks ago, and of course, the ongoing trade talks with China as well.
Do you think it means that those trade deals are in limbo as well, Eric?
Well, not necessarily, but given the fact that this court has ruled that the president exceeded his authority, what it does is it puts both the UK and China in the catbird seat, because now they have all the leverage. And now that it now means that the president can no longer implement these punishing tariffs. It begs the question, why, in fact, would either of these countries, or any country for that matter, actually seek to actually enter into a trade agreement with the president under the fear or threat that there will be these punishing tariffs if, in fact, they don't do so?
Of course, as we say, he's going to appeal this, and he stands a good chance of getting it overturned. What seems to be difficult for him in the PR area of all of this is, in the wake of this, the markets have absolutely soared.
Yeah, that's right. We know that the president, when he implemented these tariffs, we saw trillions of wealth wiped out. But we also have to remember this court that actually made this ruling. This was a this was a panel of 3 judges, 2 of which were appointed by conservative presidents, one actually being appointed by Donald Trump himself, another one by Ronald Reagan. The only other judge that actually ruled in this case was a judge that was appointed by Barack Obama. And so what we have been seeing over and over for a lot of Donald Trump's policy issues is that you have had courts overturn much of his agenda. And so the question becomes, where does this leave the president? And of course, where does this leave his policy agenda, particularly as he looks to try to reshape the economic landscape on trade with tariffs?
And meanwhile, we're hearing that Elon Musk has left the Trump administration. Do you think he'd just come to the end of his tenure, or do you think there was tension rumbling between these 2 men?
Well, we had heard, of course, and we know that Elon Musk himself had already signaled that he would be leaving the administration and that he would be sunsetting and heading back to head up many of his companies. I think what we're seeing now, given the fact that he has certainly criticized the president's signature legislative act, the Build Back Better Act, I think that certainly opened the door for Elon Musk to leave the White House for good. Of course, we know there is no love lost between Elon Musk and many of the cabinet members who felt that he certainly overstepped his bounds by actually usurping much of their authority in terms of who they could hire and actually keep on and bring on to lead their agencies. So I'm pretty sure much of Washington, many of those cabinet secretaries certainly are happy to see Elon Musk go.